And we're on. Señor
Yeah.
Lozano, mucho gusto en tenerlo aquí.
Mucho gusto.
So, sir, let me open up a beer para acompañarlo.
Yeah.
Salud.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Gracias.
So, sir, tell everybody who you are and what do you do first? We'll start off like that.
Well, Andres Lozano. I've been here 5.5 years.
Uh-huh.
Came from Colombia. I'm a realtor, and I've been. It's been a great change in my career. I was running an English institute in Colombia, and now from selling English classes to selling homes.
Selling homes. Wow. That's huge. So let's start at the beginning because you have an interesting story. You've lived all around the world, and your story starts in Colombia, right?
Yeah. So I was born in Cali, Colombia.
Okay.
1973, and lived in Cali until the age of 8.
Do you remember a lot of Cali before those
I
first years?
I do, because we were a very close family with my grandfather and my grandmother and my uncles and aunts and cousins, and we had a farm which had a big house, and it had a nice swimming pool, and it had a small river that crossed through the farm. And
Oh, wow.
and I remember that we would spend our weekends at the farm, so we always looked forward to the weekend
Right.
with our grandparents at the farm.
So was it just like a retreat? Does your grandparents own the farm or
My grandparents owned the farm, and it was more like a weekend farm. It
Like a
wasn't. It was not like agricultural. It was just like pleasure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you moved at 8 years old?
So from I lived in Cali until the age of 8, and then we moved to Bogota.
Okay.
And in Bogota, we were there 1 year. My dad was working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
And then in 1983, we moved the whole family, father, mother, and 5 brothers and sisters.
So you moved at the age of 8 and you guys moved to Bogota.
Yes.
And then, so your dad was the Ministry of Affairs, you said?
My dad was working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Foreign Affairs, okay.
And that's where all the the diplomats and my dad happens to be the son of Libardo Lozano Guerrero, who was the governor of El Departamento del Valle del Cauca. He was the mayor of the city of Cali. He was a senator, and my dad, followed in his footsteps and became a diplomat representing Colombia in Egypt. And so in 1983, after my dad spent a year in Bogota at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we were transferred as the Colombian consul to Cairo, Egypt.
Oh, wow. So to go back, so your grandfather was the mayor of...
My grandfather has an avenue to his name, has a statue in the city of Cali, has his name imprinted in the mayor's the building for the mayor. He was at the council of the city. He was vice president of Colombia to Carlos Lleras Restrepo, an ex-president.
So he was to Restrepo, the vice president?
My grandfather, before the position for vice president was called vice president, it was secretario privado de la presidencia de la república.
Right.
That was like the right hand of the president. Yeah. So my grandfather was someone that left his imprint in Colombia.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
And that's why, when my dad wanted to become a diplomat because he wanted to live in India, my grandfather called the president and said, "Hey, my son wants to be a diplomat."
Yeah.
And the president says, "Well, I don't have India, but I have Egypt."
So yeah.
And my dad said, "No, I don't want to go to Egypt." And my grandfather said, "Hey, but you're halfway to India,
Yeah.
You're closer from Africa, Egypt, Africa to
Right.
Asia."
Yeah.
than from Colombia to India. Yeah.
Was there a reason he wanted to go to India, or?
Yeah, my dad has practiced meditation for the past 50 years.
Oh, wow.
So my dad has had a connection with India since before I was born. Yeah. So we were raised in a vegetarian family. Like I tasted no eggs, no meat, no fish, no steak, like the delicious ones that you make.
Yeah.
I was a vegetarian for the first 20 years of my life.
Oh, wow.
And the philosophy behind being a vegetarian wasn't, because being a vegetarian is healthier than eating meat. It was because of more of a spiritual background where this spiritual guide from India says that the soul transmigrates, from living being to living being, and we had to live doing the least, harm to creation, and it's easier to kill a plant than to kill a cow.
Oh, wow.
I mean, anyone can pull an apple out of a tree, but not everyone can take a chicken from the farm and kill it and cook it.
Right.
So there's more life than in the fruit.
Yeah.
So my dad always pursued, being close to the spiritual guide, and that's in his pursuit of living in India. Our first step was Egypt.
Oh, wow. How was that transition from Colombia to Egypt for you at that young age?
Well, it with a family of 5 brothers and sisters, I'm the second of 5. It's always easier because you are in a big family, and in a way, my dad has always led the family. He currently still is alive. I'm lucky to have him alive. We adapted. We adapted to whatever change came. Maybe the biggest challenge was the English. Mm-hmm. We did not speak English back in 1983. My sister was 11 years old. I was 9. Agustin was 7. Juan was 6. My sister Irene was 3 years old. And practically my English when I left Colombia was umbrella, good morning, goodbye, and that was it. That was all my English. So at the beginning, the biggest challenge was which school would accept 5 kids without the language.
Yeah.
So the first year in Egypt had a very big Italian community, and the Italian community had an Italian school. So we had to go to Egypt, go to an Italian school, which is very different than Spanish, be exposed to an Arabic environment, not lose the Spanish as a language, so speak Spanish at home, and have English classes to be able to transition into the British school.
Right.
So we were like, and then because English was a given, English was not like a second language. It was a British school. You had to speak English. We had to take a second language. So I was learning French as a second language, but I was also learning English. I was practicing my Spanish at home, not to forget it. And I was exposed to an Arab environment where if I didn't learn the basics to say, hey, become, how much is this? Like, salam alaikum, the greeting, like, like alatul, take me straight, yamin to the left, like shamal to the left, yamin to the right. I had to learn my basics in Arabic too. So
4 languages all at once, or 3 languages learning.
Well, Spanish, Italian, French, Egyptian, Arabic. Yeah,
oh, wow.
Correct.
And do you still speak those all 4?
Well, I get to practice my Arabic sometimes with one of our lenders in the office that is from Egypt. So it's nice to relate to someone from a country where I was almost 6 years of my life.
Oh wow! So you were there for 6 years.
Yes, from the age of 9 to the age of 15.
How were those years there?
When you're a diplomat, you are like in a bubble. You live a diplomat's life. You have 2 cars, you have 2 drivers, you have a cook, you have multiple people helping you at home, and you believe you believe you're tidy because your bed is always made, your room is always clean, you believe you know how to prepare breakfast because breakfast is a given. It's always there. Lunch is always there. Dinner is served at the table. It was a life of luxuries that you can't pay in America. You can't have two drivers. You can't have multiple people helping you at home because it's expensive.
Right.
But yeah, we had a lot of people surrounding the home helping my mom.
Yeah.
And my dad. So it was nice. I think one of the things which maybe I envy a bit from people that have lived in a city all their life. Like, let's say you were born here in Chicago and you've been here all your life, and you've left Chicago only on vacation, but you come back to your base, which is Chicago. You have a sphere of friends. You have people that you grew up with. You have people that you went to school with. You have people that then you transitioned to college with. You have friends that got married, had kids. You're like a tío for many of those children who surround your life. When you live in a diplomat's world, you have friends for maybe 6 months, and then their father is transferred somewhere else and they're gone. Then you have another best friend, and that best friend lasted for 2 months because either we were transferred or they were transferred. And sometimes there is like feeling ownership of where you are,
right.
Belonging. This is where I'm going to build my life. These are my friends who we're going to college with. That doesn't exist.
Right.
So sometimes it's a bit empty. Sometimes it's a feeling of, oh, where are my friends?
Right.
Like my Facebook friends. When especially when you start a career like mine, you say, oh, your sphere is your first go to so that you can have your first client. My sphere is in India or in Egypt or in Poland or England or Bulgaria or Yugoslavia, because all my friends were from all over the place.
Right.
And so Egypt, you say goodbye to your friends. Then India, you say goodbye to your friends. Then a short period of time in Colombia, and then Puerto Rico for 12 years, and goodbye to your friends. And now building new relations at the age of 43. I'm now 47, beginning a life from zero.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as easy. That's where you start like saying, oh, que rico. How Luis has all his friends, and I see the pictures over the weekend. It's like, where are my friends? My friends are some in Egypt,
right?
Some in India, some in Colombia, some in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. It sounds cool till you put it like that. Then you're like, man,
Yeah.
Would you give up everything to? Yeah, that is true. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. It is true. It's I was so lucky. Like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, my very, very best friend in Egypt, Aaron Halmwa from Edmonton, Alberta in Canada.
Uh-huh.
My sister, Rocio, that lives in Washington, D.C., was able to find him through a university in Canada where he's a professor.
Oh, wow.
We never gave up on looking for him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a friendship that dates to 1985. And I was able to speak with him like 2 or 3 months ago after so many years.
Right.
After almost 40, 35 years.
Yeah.
And I remember him coming to my house when his dad was transferred back to Canada. This was living in Egypt. That he came home and he gifted me a rabbit, Paquito.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And my mother was like, no. Like, when she, we're not accepting a rabbit as a pet.
All right.
But when she saw my friend come in, hug me as a best friend and say, this is part of me and it's for you.
Yeah.
Take care of Paquito. Paquito traveled from Egypt to India, from India to Colombia in 1992 and passed away of old age in Colombia.
Oh, wow.
And when I reconnected with my friend, and he sent me a picture of his desk at the university where he works, guess who he has on a portrait at his desk in his university? He has a picture of Paquito.
Oh wow! So
rabbit.
that was a big deal for him.
Yeah.
That's a cool story.
And he was a family member, for us. Paquito the rabbit, Egyptian, lived a diplomat's life in India, and passed away of old age in Colombia.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So you guys were in Egypt, and your dad finally made it then to India.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we were in Egypt. Very interesting country. Egypt is a country in the north, eastern side of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Egyptians don't feel African. They feel Arabs.
Right.
Because they're part of the Arab world, but it's in Africa. When you cross the Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea,
mm-hmm.
and you cross into Sinai, which is part of Egypt, Sinai is Asia.
Oh.
So we during that years we were in Egypt. We did a lot of traveling by road. We went to Israel by road. We would take the car in the ferry on the Suez Canal, cross to Sinai, and drive into Israel. And we also drove to Jordan. We took the car on a boat for 20 hours from Suez Canal to Port of Aqaba in Jordan.
Yes.
And then drove, into Jordan, and we spent a Christmas in Amman with a big Arab Colombian community. There are lots of Palestinian Jordanians that have businesses in Colombia,
mm-hmm.
and that have Colombian passports, and my father is a Colombian consul. The job of a consul
mm-hmm.
is that the consul represents the people,
right,
and the ambassador represents the country, the president.
Okay.
So my dad was the consul. So
okay.
he was the one giving visas to Colombia. He was the one that had more contact with the people. So he loved his job. He's always loved being in contact with people.
Yeah. How was the safety situation back then? Like, could you travel openly like that and not have problems?
So 1980s, Hosni Mubarak was president in Egypt,
mm-hmm.
and Egypt was calm. We had no security issues traveling, and we had like our license plates were diplomatic plates, which and they were written in Arabic. Mm-hmm. Maybe when we traveled to Israel, they did see us a bit, it was a bit uncomfortable,
right?
Because our car was with Arab plates, but nothing really ever happened. We went to Jerusalem, we went to the Dead Sea, we went to the Sea of Galilee. We went to all those historic places, especially for the Christian community.
Yeah.
It was very, very interesting. Very.
So, like you say, do you think what helped you a lot was your like you it was you and your brothers and your sisters that were always all traveling together that kind of helped you out with like not so always having different friends and stuff like that?
Yeah, we as a family stayed. I mean, to the date, I think.
Yeah, because I see you and your brothers are super close. Like, I'm close with my brother, but not like you guys are. Yeah, you could tell you guys are super close. Like,
yes,
you guys don't argue.
We do like a date night, family date night. My dad and us. My father calls it the club. Club. And the three brothers were all in Chicago.
Yeah.
Two of us are realtors. One of them is a lender.
Right.
We're all in the same industry, so we have like common background. So we talk the same language,
So when they told you had to leave Egypt, how was it? And like you knew you were going to India now?
Oh, we had a huge party.
Yeah,
we had a huge party. My dad invited like all the friends, and he rented like a whole restaurant and made a huge farewell. I've reconnected with some friends from Egypt. Yeah. Not only my friend Erin, but some neighbors that I had a lot of connection with, because I've always loved driving and cars, and I used to escape at 3 a.m. to drive my dad's car at the age of 13, 14. I would call my neighbors, who are now, one of them is living in Atlanta.
Okay.
And want to, reconnect with him and go see him.
Yeah.
And I would go drive the car by the Nile River, at 3 a.m., no police, no cars. Crazy.
Yeah.
Back then, I think Knight Rider,
Oh, Knight Rider.
the movie.
Yeah.
I would do everything that Knight Rider did in the movie. I would do it. My dad would, every 6 months, like, oh, these Michelin tires are not very good. They get worn out. Back then, cars didn't have traction control,
Yeah. So you were burning tires all the time.
Burning tires all the time. And my dad, estas llantas salieron malas,
Sí.
we have to change to good a year or two.
Would you sneak out by yourself, or would you take your brothers with
No,
you?
I would call my
your
neighbor. Yeah.
Y en Egypt, so, ¿qué comías en Egypt? ¿Qué es la comida que te gustaba a ti? Even though being vegetarian.
Well, there was always rice. There was always beans, because the beans are protein, like garbanzo beans or lentejas or frijoles. Con lo que ustedes hacen el refrito se llama el frijol.
Yeah, frijol.
So that was our base of protein.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and salad, pasta, eggplant. Eggplant is delicious in many ways. Egypt has very delicious eggplant plates. But basically everything except meat,
Yeah.
So we were raised with lots of vegetables, lots of protein in the form of lentils.
Yeah. So you get to India. How's India? When you're 15 now?
Yes. So when we moved to India, we had already been to India from 1983 to 1988. During the time that we were diplomats in Egypt, we traveled once or twice a year to India.
Oh, okay.
So when we transitioned to live in India, India was not like an unknown place for us. Yeah. So we first stayed a couple of months in a guest house until we found like the home that was a right fit for us.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that rents were not very cheap, especially the type of house that my dad wanted, single family home with a gated entrance.
What part of India was it?
This was New Delhi.
New Delhi?
Yeah. So in India, the toughest part of India for me was like changing from the British, from I think it was education. Education in India is very tough. In India, you pass with 33 over 100. That's how tough it is. Like in America, you pass with a 60.
Right.
But go to India and try to get a 40.
Yeah.
40 over 100.
Right.
And it's tough. It's like, oh, I got a 60. Daddy, I got a 60. Oh, I'll give you a new bike,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I believe that the base of education that I had between Egypt and India really helped me when I went to college in Colombia and ended up finishing my university in Puerto Rico.
Right.
That I was able to go from being a not so good student in school to being a magna cum laude graduate at a university in Puerto Rico.
Right.
And I think it was the base of very tough education that we had.
Did you have to, when you went to India, did you have to learn another language? Or?
No. India until around 1945, somewhere around the time my dad was born, was a British colony.
Mm-hmm.
So in India, the need of the language, of a native language, was not very necessary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
Your cook, your driver. We had many more people helping us at home in India because of the caste system. So typically, you have a house, and the house has servant quarters. That means that the house has another house apart from the main house,
right,
where you have your servants living.
Right.
And they're called the servant quarters. Yeah. Typically, in the servant quarters, you have the two most important people that help you, who's the driver and the cook.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a chef.
Okay.
And I remember when we hired ours, they would, we were interviewing who was going to become our chef at home.
Yeah.
And they would cook a meal for us and we would, eat. And then amongst, let's say, a couple of days interviewing people, we would say, James D'Souza from south of India was like our pick. And it was like, who votes for James, or who votes for Hokam, or who votes for and that's how we got our cooks.
Oh, that's cool. Did they cook for you all the time? Like
All the time.
all the time? Yeah.
All the time. And you had a buzzer that you would buzz, and the cook would listen in the servant quarters and then come and say, yes, how what do you need? Like, I want a snack.
I need one of those.
Believe me that when we got back to Colombia in 1992, and you wake up the first day to reality, and reality is that you wake up and there's no breakfast on the table.
Yeah.
It's like, grab your own breakfast. There's cornflakes. There's bread. There's cheese. You can make yourself a cheese sandwich.
Yeah.
Like, okay, but isn't someone preparing me a cheese sandwich?
Yeah.
Like, no,
Yeah.
No, because my dad couldn't afford the lifestyle that we had as diplomats,
Yeah.
So
Did you so when you in India, I've never been to India, but they say that the social classes are you're poor or you're or you're rich.
And there are many in between.
Is there in between?
Yeah.
So how was that city when you moved there? Like, was it?
Well, India is the second largest population in the world.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember that I did the math back then, and it was something like Colombia fits in India 3 times.
Oh wow!
But the population is 20 times. So it's like multiplying the population of Colombia times 20 in the same piece of land.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you now are driving in a street where you can come across a monkey, you can come across a cow, you can come across like lots of bicycles, lots of rickshaws,
right?
Which are like the taxis with 3 wheels. You see the bicycle taxi also.
Yeah.
You're driving on the opposite side because it's the British. You're driving on the right side.
Right.
And traffic is a chaos. And
did you drive in there? Did you
ever
drive in there?
Yeah. Always.
How was that the hardest?
No, I love driving in India.
Yeah. It was. Because I want to say the closest I've probably been to that, and I didn't drive, but going through traffic and everything was probably like Vietnam. Where it's just, parecía que decían, okay, we're going to go from point A to point B, y just go in a straight line, and everybody's just, no hay, it's not like here where it's controlled traffic. It's literally just
correct.
Everybody, watch out for yourself.
Correct. It's like survival of the fittest.
Yes.
And yes, there are accidents, but you would believe that there would be more accidents, than there really are.
Really?
Yeah, because of how crazy the traffic is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you got to India, did you guys travel anymore to all the other places, or like how you did when you were in Egypt?
No, we traveled more while we were in Egypt because because my dad always pursued India.
Right.
And once we were in India, like the spiritual guide that my dad has always followed had the headquarters in India. So for him, like vacation, he always we did like local traveling. We went to the Taj Mahal, we went to Rajasthan, we went to the Himalayas.
How were the Himalayas? Did you go to base camp, or you just see them?
Well, we did, and we went horse riding, to the glaciers. And I ended up studying and graduating from a boarding school up in the mountains in a small town called Kasoli. The biggest city near Kasoli would be Chandigarh. So I was in a co-education boarding school. The famous writer Rudyard Kipling studied in Sanauer, Lawrence School Sanauer. I have a big community of friends from India in the United States, and I have a very large WhatsApp group, both with people that graduated from my high school in India that live in America, and also a WhatsApp group with all the graduates from 1992 from Lawrence School Sanauer, batch of 1992 in India, So I do stay connected to it. It was like I was the only Farangi. That's how they called me. Farangi means foreigner. I was the only foreigner in the boarding school.
Oh, wow.
I was studying with high class people from India that would even come with bodyguards to the school, and then they were dropped at the school, and then the bodyguards would go. It was like top notch, Indian boarding school.
Oh yeah. Did they ever pick on you for being foreign?
Yeah, they used to call me white ass, because we had when we went into the showers, we were it was everyone naked, and I was the the white one. Yeah.
So that was your teenage years. Did you play sports or anything else when you were there?
Yes, we competed in karate.
Oh wow.
So we represented the Colombian embassy. There were tournaments, inter-embassy tournaments, where we, as the Colombian embassy, represented Colombia versus Philippines versus Russia versus Bulgaria, Romania, So we did play. We did play karate. Mm-hmm. We all did karate. Our instructor would come. We had a rooftop where he would teach us at home.
Oh, yeah. Did you in all this time that when you were meeting all these diplomats and you were living the diplomatic life, is there anybody famous that's now a huge diplomat that you might have met back then that you could think of? Just out of curiosity.
Well, we met Arafat.
Okay.
We also met the president of India, because when you come to the country as a diplomat, you practically go to the palace of the president and you present your credentials, and the president of India gives you the welcome. Yeah.
Right.
We also met. We must have shaken hands with many people at events. We had visits. We had visits like Andres Pastrana, president of Colombia, who visited our home in Egypt before he was even president. We I don't remember
particularly, but there was a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, my dad would host meetings at home, and it was full of cars and drivers and bodyguards and politicians who would come, but it was practically my dad who was hosting the.
Did you guys ever have a bodyguard?
No.
So how many years were you in India?
4 years.
4 years. So you're 19 when you leave India?
I was short. Yeah, 2 weeks before I turned 19, I went back to Colombia.
Yeah. And what was the reason you guys went back to Colombia? Yeah,
because when you're a diplomat and you finish a cycle, you finish the cycle.
Oh, okay.
It's like done. Yeah.
So were you excited to go back to Colombia after all those years of being away?
Yes. It was exciting to go back and see the family. While living in Egypt, my grandfather, the grandfather who was the governor and the mayor and the senator, passed away in an airplane crash, and I think we missed on growing up with our cousins and our grandfather, having enjoyed more time with family. That's something that you really give up when you live a diplomat's life. It's like everyone can envy you, but sometimes it's a bit of a lonely life with regards to close, blood family. Like we had them all back in Colombia.
Yeah. And then so you moved back to Colombia. It's what? It's 90. You're in the 90s now?
1992.
1992.
1992.
How's Colombia then in the 90s? Is it still? Was it bad? Do you remember it being bad when you were young?
No.
Or was it?
Because Young was from 1973 to 1983.
Okay.
So I believe that the blessing of not having lived in Colombia between 1983 and 92, which were the worst years, even though Pablo Escobar was alive when we went to Colombia, it was much. It was a good upbringing in a safe environment.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to live all the, at least the time when the narcos were stronger than the government. Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about Colombia. So you moved back. You're 19. So you're going to college now, or are you?
So at the age of 18, short of being 19 when I went back to Colombia, I had stayed behind between January of 1992 and April of 1992 because I was in 12th grade and the board exams in India were back, were going to happen in March or beginning of April. I don't recall exactly when. So I stayed at the boarding school, finishing my 12th grade. My family, my mom and my brothers and sisters had left in December of 91. My dad left India in January of 92. And back between 1988 and 1992, and before the Indian economy opened to import of goods from other countries, we as diplomats had access to catalogs, and we would have to import our toilet paper, our Coca-Cola, Fanta, 7-Up, because the only options in India was Campa Cola as a Coca-Cola, or Thumbs Up as a Pepsi, or Limca as a lemon, or Gold Spot as a Fanta, the orange Fanta. Mm-hmm. So it was like all different tastes for us as Westerners. So my dad would have access to a catalog, and we would import many goods for us as diplomats tax-free, because the tax was like 400%, or I think it was something like crazy.
Oh wow!
If you wanted to buy a $30,000 car, it would cost you $120,000, and that was a way for the Indian economy to protect its own economy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you want to buy a car, a Toyota? Well, pay $100,000. But if you want to buy a Maruti from India, or an ambassador car from India, then it's going to cost you $25,000.
Right.
So when my dad left to Colombia, he had lots of Coca-Cola, 7-Up, and Fanta cans that were not consumed. And I've always been business oriented.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if I'm going to Colombia, I want to have some money. And I sold Coca-Cola, 7-Up, Fanta to my friends at twice the price and at no cost for me, because it was leftovers from what my dad had in the household.
Yeah.
And with that money, I went to the market and I bought clothes and silver jewelry, which I took back to Colombia. And my sister was going to Universidad de los Andes, which is like the top university in Bogota. And I started selling Indian clothes at the age of 19.
So was that your official first job, you could say?
My official first job was a businessman. I started selling. And my dad was like, Andres, you have to go to college. But I started making money. And when you start making money, you want to continue making money.
Yeah.
And then And then I traveled back to India in June, like 3 months after I came to Colombia. I sold everything that I had brought and went back to India with more money and bought more clothes and more silver jewelry. And then, in a way, many people caught on the idea of traveling to India. And very short after I started doing the business, many people started traveling. And many people would be suppliers of goods from India.
Right.
So it was a short, good period of time that lasted while I ran out of money. And my dad said, well, Andres, now you're going to college? And I said, yes, I'm going to college.
Yeah.
And then I go into college. First semester, my dad gets broke. From having lived in Egypt and India, making Deutsch, a German Deutsch, or making US dollars converted into Egyptian pounds or converted into rupees from India.
Yeah.
My dad was living the life. Now he goes to Colombia, to a Colombian salary. Even though it was a good salary, it wasn't good enough for 5 young kids in ages transitioning from high school to college.
Right.
And in Colombia, when you live, Colombia is divided, the cities are divided into 6 estratos. Estrato 6 being like the high tax areas. Estrato 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we lived in Estrato 6. So when you go and you put your kids in the university, they ask, oh, so where do you live? Oh, I live in Highland Park, or I live in Cedritos, or I live in El Country Club neighborhood, Oh, okay, you pay 20 million pesos in college tuition, And my dad quickly started spending his savings. And in 1995, I had to drop out of college and look for a job. And I found a job teaching English. Yeah, and guess what? 1995, you can search, because it's not that I'm making up the story, but 1995, Shakira was my student for 1 month.
Oh, wow.
And that was the month that Shakira had launched her CD, Pies Descalzos. And once that CD hit the market and she became super famous, she left the institute. Now she was Shakira, the famous Shakira.
Right.
But when I had Shakira for a month, she was the Shakira. And I also had for a week Adela Noriega, the actress from Mexico. Beautiful Adela Noriega. She was in my classroom.
Yeah.
She was filming in Colombia, and she was learning at the Mayer Institute. She was learning English.
My cousins used to go to it was a bar or restaurant. It was like a bar restaurant on 26th Street in La Vita. I want to say it was La Condesa. It was called. And this had to have been in the 90s. But this was like a little venue. I mean, like a Lalo's in Harlem. Y allí iba Shakira a hacer sus conciertos. Traían a Shakira. It's like a lot of big big acts now that
and this was back when?
This had to have been it was like in 90, like around there, like in 95, 96.
When she was beginning to pick up, when she was beginning.
Yeah,
I remember.
Cuando los latinos sabían quién era Shakira, pero los güeros todavía no sabían quién era.
No, yo recuerdo que ella llegaba en un Suzuki Swift.
Sí.
Verdecito. A car that would have cost her father maybe $5,000. That was her car. I mean, she was maybe 20 years old. She was maybe 19.
Yeah.
Like I related more Shakira as looked like my sister Irene, mi hermana menor. Oh, but when Adela Noriega walked into my classroom, I mean that
Adela Noriega.
Look for Adela. I was nervous. My forehead was sweating. La Quinceañera. Hay una novela llamada Quinceañera with Adela Noriega.
Adela Noriega.
Oh,
yeah. I know who it is now.
1995.
Yeah, y eso es cuando todavía no tiene tanta cirugía.
While she was while she was learning English and filming in Colombia, her mother passed away.
Oh, wow.
And she had to leave Colombia back to Mexico. So I've even Googled, when did her mom pass away? In 1995, while she was there.
See, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Oh, wow. See,
So great experience, having been an English teacher, and it was an institute with whom I left a great reputation as a teacher. That when the economy crashed while I was living in Puerto Rico, and this was 2008, I lived in Puerto Rico between 96 and 2008. I knocked on the door of the Mayor Institute, and I went back to Colombia while the economy here was in a terrible recession.
Correct.
I worked again at the Mayor Institute, but now I was a professional. And even though I did have some classes and I was a teacher, I was the director of the Mayor Institute in Cartagena.
Uh-huh.
And then I became a regional manager of the Mayor Institute in Cartagena, Barranquilla, and in La Guajira, donde está la compañía El Cerrejón. Oh. I had teachers teaching at El Cerrejón, so it was great, 5 years that I spent in Colombia during the recession.
Did you, before I forget, did you ever drink Kingfisher beer in India?
No, not that I recall.
Not that you recall. All right.
Yeah.
I've always heard about it. Because I guess drinking in India is not a big thing.
Oh, it is. It is, and especially in the high class.
See, I think that's where it is.
Yeah,
in the high class.
Because we had a very, very strict father. Because he was like my dad has not tasted alcohol since he's 24, and he's now 74. So for the past 50 years,
mm-hmm.
So we were never raised with meat, with alcohol.
Yeah.
We were. My dad doesn't listen to vallenatos and merengue and salsa and no. He's a different type of Colombian. But he's Colombian.
Yeah. And then so you moved to Puerto Rico. So you were there in Puerto Rico for 10 years then? Or close to 10 years?
So between my years in Colombia from 92 to 96,
mm-hmm.
in 96, while I was in college studying business, my dad was offered a government position in Puerto Rico, which never ended up happening. But my dad told Agustin and myself, hey, go ahead and go to Puerto Rico in 1996. That I'll catch up and come in January. Well, January never came, and my dad in January said, well, Puerto Rico is a stepping stone to the United States. It's part of the United States, We enrolled in La Universidad Interamericana de Puerto Rico. 4 of the 5 of us, my sister Rocio graduated at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Mm-hmm. But Andres, Agustin, Juan, and Irene were all from the Interamericana de Puerto Rico. We all lived in Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
Both my daughters were born in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How was Puerto Rico when you moved? So how was that transition then from Colombia to Puerto Rico?
It was an easy transition.
Yeah.
Because my dad now had the means to he rented us a place by the beach in Isla Verde, where airplanes land in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And el aeropuerto queda en Isla Verde.
Uh-huh.
And we had an apartment by the beach, and we had pocket money from my dad, and he was paying for college, and he had a girlfriend in Puerto Rico that gifted us a car and gave us a job. So the transition to Puerto Rico was you're in the island, 100 miles by 35, and you're living in the best neighborhood, and you're now the son of the diplomat, but with a good position in Colombia.
Yeah.
So and back then it was $1 million pesos to $1,000, which now is much more difficult to send us $1,000 because it would be 3.5 million pesos.
Right.
Because of the devaluation.
Yeah.
So he was making money, and we were having a good life. We we did our homework of being excellent at university. My brother Agustin graduated summa cum laude, and myself magna cum laude, with which we did our best to pay back to our father, who was doing a great sacrifice to sustain us. So maybe Colombia is a bit like Mexico. I don't know how it is there, but in Colombia, as parents, we are in charge of our kids until they leave college.
So that was going to be my other my next question. So education for you in your household was always super important. You mean?
Yes. We, the five of us, two of them, my sister Lucio and Agustin, have master's degrees, but we all have a bachelor degree. We're five of us, and the five of us graduated from college.
I think, and people probably can say something if I say the way I'm gonna say it, but I think in Mexico, I think with depending on what your parents do and who they are, how educated they are, it might be like that, and it is like that to a certain extent here. I think what it is it just depends on the resources your parents have. Mm-hmm. And, when it comes to college and stuff like that, like yo me acuerdo cuando trabajaba en State Farm, I was insuring a car, y el señor, he's like, he goes, le compré este carro a mi hija, she just graduated college, or she just graduated high school para que se vaya al colegio y todo lo demás. I was like, that's really nice. He goes, y tu papá a ti no te, no te dieron un carro, no te mandaron al colegio. And I'm like, yeah, no, totally different parents, totally different. But it was just, education wasn't a big thing in my household when I was growing up. I think it was more like, find a job, that'll put money in your pocket so you could survive. And it was more of a survival mentality than an educational mentality. Pero yo tengo primos también en Mexico que, that grew up like me, and I have other ones that, their parents, really, se enfocaron en la educación de ellos and stuff like that. And, some people took advantage of it and some people didn't. I mean, but at the end of the day,
in our particular case, my dad had tutors. We had we always had tutors at home. We had school, and then we had tutoring at home.
Yeah,
he always had us with help with mathematics, with Spanish, with piano classes, with karate classes. He did his best. Yeah.
So in Puerto Rico, going back to India. So what was your favorite food in India? I forgot to ask you.
Oh, Indian food is delicious. I mean,
is it?
Everything is delicious.
Yeah.
I like the cheese pakora, the samosa, which is como la empanada colombiana, pero with a filling of a seasoned potato. El paneer, which is the cheese. Paneer is. I was looking how they make the paneer, and you boil milk, and then you either put some lemon or vinegar.
Yeah,
and it keeps boiling, and then and then la cuelas en un trapo. Then el suero sale,
sí.
And the block of paneer is left. Yes, there is a lot of waste porque todo termina en suero.
Yeah.
Pero el paneer es delicioso. You season it, you mix it with some arvejas.
Yeah.
And some curry and some masala.
Yeah.
And it's delicious.
I gotta get into Indian food. Everybody tells me that's maybe like the one food que no, I haven't really.
Well, we'll make a plan and I'll take you to an Indian restaurant.
All right, yes.
Yeah.
So then when's the first time you eat meat then? I wanted to ask you.
Well, the first time I ate meat was in Colombia.
See?
And when we went back to Colombia in 1992, I was 19. I was 19. So it's an age where you party. You're out, you go have some drinks, and then every time you go back home, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you stop to get a bite to eat.
Yeah.
And what do you get? You get hamburgers or hot dogs. That's practically what you eat in Colombia at 2 or 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I think you've been there, and right. That's what you eat. And I was like, oh, that hot dog looks delicious. So the first thing I ate was a hot dog. It was like hidden inside a bun of bread, because I didn't really want to see the piece of meat.
Oh, okay.
Because I was not only thinking I was thinking about the cow who was alive in a field eating grass, and poor cow was picked up by a truck, and she was taken to a slaughterhouse, and now she's on my plate. Poor cow.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of the whole process. But I tasted it and I liked it.
Yeah.
And then I tasted the hamburger and I liked it. And then we went to a barbecue at our farm, and I had this, girlfriend who, Andres, ¿no vas a comer asado? La carne está deliciosa. Like I'm looking at her eat with like, this is delicious. Oh, la carne está bien sabrosa.
Yeah.
Like, give me a bite of steak, and I tasted steak and I said, wow, I was missing on this,
Yeah.
And then I went to a mariscos place and I ate shrimp and I ate fish and I ate, scallops, and I started like introducing food, non-vegetarian food at the age of 20, and ever since,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're doing the steaks, I'm always there like, hey,
Yeah.
I
got you next time.
Yeah.
It's the so in Puerto Rico, how was it living in Puerto Rico? I've been there once. How was living in the beach? Did you ever travel around the island?
Yes, I did, and I had a very successful business in Puerto Rico. I had a roofing business.
Oh,
yeah, and I also bought 2 horses, and I had in a farm in Sidra where I had a couple of stables rented, and that was my hobby on the weekend, which I think, and I have expressed it, that once my real estate career, continues to grow at the pace it's growing,
yeah,
and I get to a point where I have money for the publicity, for my employees, for my household, I do want to introduce a horseback to my life,
yeah,
and have not necessarily be the owner of the farm where the horse is,
right,
but a place where they can care for it, and I can go on the weekends, or like go after work, be with the horse,
yeah,
ride it, like
yeah,
bathe it, yeah.
So let's forward. So how many businesses have you had before real estate?
I had the first business I ever had was selling clothes from India.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been in sales. I've always been like I've never. Yo nunca quepo como en un cajón.
Yeah.
I always have to be thinking outside the box.
Right.
And I'm never also satisfied. Like, oh, you got a great job. You're making $60,000 a year on your first job, but those $5,000 become like short to me because I want more. So my first business was importing goods from India. My second business came in Puerto Rico. When I finished college, I worked in a research and development project, tenderizing meat with shockwaves. And I used to travel back and forth to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, because that's where our meat scientist was. But at the same time, my best friend had a roofing business.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, drinking some whiskeys, Black Label, I said, hey, Pipe, 2 a.m., we're drinking. I want to open a business like yours. And, he said, well, what are you waiting for? I'll teach you.
Yeah.
And he shadowed me to a couple of quotes. We climb on the roof, measure the roof, and tell the person, hey, $2 per square foot. Your roof is 2,000 square feet, $4,000. Deme la mitad por adelantado and la mitad cuando termine. And soon after I started my roofing business, like you've seen me do for real estate, it was like I started like pursuing, I want to be the best roofer.
Yeah.
And I bought materials at a certain company where I started getting awards, like, oh, Andres Lozano is the rookie of the year. Andres Lozano is the one that bought most square foot of rolls for his projects,
Yeah.
And I was a roofer if you ask me how much money I made, my answer to you would be, I never had to ask how much something was. I would just pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much money was coming in from roofing. And because it was so consistently, I was receiving new contracts. I had no notion of the money, but I was not saving because I was living the life. I was young. I was drinking every day. I was partying every day. I was in a bit of a crazy life,
Right.
but very responsible with my job.
Yeah.
I would wake up at 5 a.m. no matter at what time I went to bed.
Mm-hmm.
When the economy crashed in the United States back in 2007, 2008,
Correct.
I had no savings. I lost my horses. I lost my house. I lost everything.
So that was felt all the way to Puerto Rico.
Oh, Puerto Rico was felt very, 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 very strong. Yeah, it was felt very, very strong.
Was it because there was a lot of money coming from people that lived in the U.S. that was going into Puerto Rico?
No, there was a lot of pharmaceuticals in Puerto Rico. There was a lot of there was a lot of business pouring in from the United States to Puerto Rico.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So all those companies were in Puerto Rico. So that's where Puerto Rico felt the recession then, when all that stuff started coming down.
I remember the words of a teacher that was teaching me economy at the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. And he said something very wise that I will remember forever. And that 10 years after he said it, it happened. And he quote, he said exactly these words. He said, if the U.S. economy gets a flu, the Puerto Rican economy gets bronchitis, or
Gets it worse.
gets it worse.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Oh wow.
Si la economía de Puerto Rico si a la economía de Estados Unidos dar un catarro, la economía de Puerto Rico dar una pulmonía.
Yeah.
Those were his words. He was from Martinique. His first language, I think, was French.
Yeah.
And one of the things which I was so much into my life. I had 4 cars, 2 horses, whatever I wanted, that I was blindsided to what was really happening. So because money was still coming in, I said, I still had money from projects coming in. I said to myself, well, maybe it's the competition. I wasn't looking at the dimension of the crisis. I was still with my horses, I was still with my cars, I was still making my payments, but no new business was coming in. But I still had business on the pipeline, but no new business. But I wasn't looking at that because I was so much into the lifestyle that I was having that I said, oh, okay, how do we offset? How do we make up for new business? Invest more in publicity. And I invested and I signed contracts with different newspapers and Las Páginas Amarillas. No new business came in.
Yeah.
I broke.
Oh, wow.
And I saw how 3 of my 4 cars were towed away from the front of my house.
Yeah.
And I had bought a Toyota Land Cruiser that I had bought it cash.
Yeah.
And I put it on a boat in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and picked it up in Fort Lauderdale. This was December of 2008. If you Google December 2008, Chicago was hit by the coldest winter in many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And I drove into Chicago in my Toyota Land Cruiser from Puerto Rico.
It didn't have any heater?
It did. I had to connect the heating system prior to traveling and prepare the car for the winter.
Right.
Yeah. Next day from arriving, the water pump broke. You know, the car started like the windows wouldn't open because it wasn't used to such a cold weather.
Yeah.
You know.
Was that your first time in Chicago?
No, my dad has lived in Chicago for a long time.
Okay.
When I was in Puerto Rico in the research and development project, meat tenderizing with shockwaves, and I had the meat scientist at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, I would always land in O'Hare and stay in Chicago and rent a car, be with my family, and then drive to Madison, Wisconsin. So I came to Chicago many times before I moved to Chicago. When I moved to Chicago, I was only here for 90 days. I saw my brother Juan, a realtor, lender. Back then he was a lender, driving his BMW 745 to a restaurant, Papadou, you know, as a server. And I was like, oh, what's happening in America? My brother Juan drives a 745. He has no loans, his house is, my dad's losing his house to foreclosure, Juan too. Everyone's in a crisis. And I was like, what's happening to America? This is a crisis. And Oak Brook Toyota, I went and worked as a car salesman.
Yeah.
I knocked on the door first at the, you know where all these cars on, I think it's Cermak or Oak Brook.
On LaGrange.
There are lots of car dealers, Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini.
You're talking about in on 30. Is it 31st? No, it's not 30. Yeah, it is.
Ogden?
On Ogden.
On Ogden.
Off of 83.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so I went there and I said, okay, this was my thinking process. I'm looking at Toyotas. Let's not sell Toyotas. I'm looking at Lamborghinis. Maybe Lamborghini doesn't sell, so, but let's drive into the BMW or Mercedes. Higher price point, better commissions, correct? I go in to look for a job, and this is a job without a salary. This is you make your own money, correct? I just need the opportunity. Like, hire me, and I'll sell the cars. And the manager tells me, look at all the empty desks. Nobody's selling. And especially expensive cars in the recession. My advice is go to Toyota. So I went to Oak Brook Toyota. And I worked as a salesman for a month. When I sold, I closed on 4 or 5 cars in my first 30 days. I think on my first day, I received a trade-in, and it was a Ford Focus, and she drove out with a Camry. It was like, this is a piece of cake. I'm going to make money. It was a $35,000 transaction between purchase and trade-in. And you would imagine maybe you make $1,000, maybe $1,500. When paycheck day came, I got $300 in commissions. And I'm like, excuse me, you must be making a mistake. And the manager shows me an invoice for the Camry, and he says, it cost us $30,000 to buy the Camry, but we gave your client a discount of $1,000, so it was sold under invoice price. So your commission is $100. And the trade-in, you don't get anything for the trade-in. And the Corolla that you sold, we also gave you a discount, so we sold under invoice price. You get another $100. And I had some co-workers, I remember, from Mexico, because in Chicago, when you relate to a Latino, 80% would be from Mexico, that they were very nice to me. And they really helped me make the sale happen, because it entails a lot of things. And I was brand new, but I was at the door waiting for the clients to walk in. I was going to be the top salesperson in the company. And I felt humiliated with the commissions that I was paid.
Yeah.
That I told the dealer to distribute those resources amongst the salespeople that helped me make the sales happen.
Yeah.
And I walked out and I sold my Toyota Land Cruiser to Agustin, my brother, and I bought a ticket and went back to Colombia to be the director of the Mayor Institute, where I had been a teacher.
Yeah.
And I was made the director of the Mayor Institute in Cartagena. So I went to Colombia 5 years.
Oh, wow.
It was like, how can I sell $100,000 worth of cars and make $300 worth of money?
I sold cars for a month también, and it was, I think that was the hardest job I've ever had, just because of that. You have to sell a lot, and then si la gente está comprando, and then lo que duras con la gente, sentado ahí, and everything else, like,
yeah,
it's a tough job. Mi respeto para los car salesmen. You know?
Yes, me too.
Yeah,
because I remember that if you sell the carpets, and if you sell this, and if you sell the insurance, and if you sell, like all the other additions, you start making $50 here and $50 more here, and then you make like $500 off of a sale. So if you do 10 sales a month, you're at $5,000. So yeah, but I did not connect with that industry.
Yeah, no. So let's fast forward to you come back to the United States. You're in Colombia. You're
Yes. So I'm in Colombia, and my brother Juan, who's a realtor. Andres, come to America with the discipline that you have, that your work ethic. You're working from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. If the economy is doing good, come to America. I came back, and I came back June 15th, 2015.
okay.
5.5 years ago. And at the very beginning, it was like I said, well, let me look for jobs in the roofing industry. I can become a roofing salesperson because I have some background. But I always put on my resume that I was a former roofing company owner. So whenever I got interviewed, they would say, "Oh, so now you're going to learn from us and then open your own business. Like, you're not hired." Then I bought my first car, and I started Uber driving. I became a realtor. I would Uber drive with discipline. So for me, it was like paid myself $1,000 a week salary from my Uber driving. And then when I became a realtor, I was like, where do I get my clients? So I joined the team. I worked in a team in 2017, and I learned the trade. And then in 2018, I went independent, and I continued driving Uber to pay Zillow to get leads. Because who could I call as friends? At the beginning of our podcast, we were talking about Egypt, India, Puerto Rico. Who's my sphere? My sphere is all over the place. Who's going to buy a house from me?
Right.
So I had to create my own sphere. I had to create my own leads. I had to pay my way up. I started, concentrating my efforts in a certain zip code. And in my first year of business, I did 26 sales, $5.3 million, and made it to the top in the company where I was in Elmhurst. And had always, for the past 3 years, had contact with David Dominguez from our company, the manager broker on the South Side. And he never tried to recruit me for Realty of Chicago, but he would say, "Hey, Andres, welcome to our Thanksgiving, event, or the back to school event." And he always counted on me as part of the company, without being part of the company, but just as a friend.
Right.
And that's how I end up, moving my license to where I currently am at Realty of Chicago, and took my business to a next level last year. And I made it to the top 1% in the Chicagoland area as a Latino agent, and top 250 agent in the nation. And now building a team, and it's been a very, very sacrificed way up, because I'm not 25 anymore, but it's been worth every you know, every sweat. It's been worth. It's God has been good with me. Yeah.
How hard is it to upskill? Like now you have your team and you're growing and you keep growing and growing. How hard is it, and when do you know that you need another person, or how do you make those decisions?
Well, it's not easy, because you have to give up sometimes on self-production in order to be able to keep a team and to feed the team. So I think growth and transition within the team comes on its own. Some of the people in a team will stay with you for good because they are more wired towards being a member of belonging to something, But there are some that will transition while they jumpstart their own careers, So you have to understand that you have to let go, and when you start looking at that, that's when you start putting new blood into the team. That's what I feel. Yeah.
So 2 questions I ask everybody. One, when you were growing up, when you were small, when you were a kid or a teenager in Egypt, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Oh, I wanted to be a policeman.
A policeman?
Yeah, or I wanted to be the driver of an ambulance, and everything that had to do with speed.
Yeah.
If I was a policeman, I could climb on top of the pavements, and with a siren, I could run the red lights. I could drive at high speeds.
Yeah.
So it was more related to the speed. More related to the car.
Yeah. I had a friend growing up. Él quería ser policía. He wanted to be a police officer, but he wanted to be a police officer because he's like, I like driving around. He would just drive around all day long, just cruising in his car. He's like, I want to be a cop so I could just cruise all day. That was his.
Yeah.
That was his.
No, I wanted to be driving fast, and because I've seen police pursue cars and they climb on top of every,
Yeah.
They won't get a ticket if they climb on top of wherever they want to climb up,
Yeah.
So it was more that, I think I started transitioning, from that. When I was in high school in India at the boarding school, I applied to a car racing school in England, and my dad said, I will pay you college, but I will pay you an education. And then with your own means, you can become a car driver or a race car driver. I wanted to be Carlos Sainz, and I wanted to be a rally car driver, like off-road.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was my passion. For many years in high school, it was like, I'm going to be a rally car driver, and that's the life I wanted, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And
then the other thing, what advice would you yourself today give your younger self in growing up in Egypt as a teenager?
What advice would I give myself?
You today, you Andres today, give yourself back then.
I lived in Egypt and India, and I could be fluent in Arabic and fluent in Hindi. I could have taken the advantage of learning the language, of learning more about the culture, educating myself more of the places where I was. But you're more in the bubble of the lifestyle than you're really thinking about your future at the age, So definitely I can only say I speak English and Spanish.
Yeah.
Because I can greet and say hello, goodbye, go straight, stop, right, left in Arabic. But I could have been fluent,
Yeah.
So I would, if I could change something, would have been to acquire multiple languages during the years that I was in Egypt and India.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then the last one is and just because it's October, so I've been asking everybody if they have a spooky story. Do you have any ghost stories that you've traveled all around the world, or any spooky stories of anything like that, or no?
Spooky story is like something related to.
Yeah, like ghosts, espantos, anything supernatural.
Well, no, I do remember living in Cali as a kid, and it was 2 or 3 a.m. I wanted to, I needed to go to the bathroom. And when I would step out of bed, I felt that graveyards would open, and I was having a nightmare.
Yeah,
I needed to go to the bathroom, but I couldn't.
Right.
Because something supernatural was happening in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And I remember it to the date as if it really happened.
Really?
But I guess it was just a nightmare.
And so living in Egypt and India and all that other places, and then your dad being spiritual and stuff like that. Was there anything like that ever? Like, was there? Did you ever see, like, would people talk about stuff like that, or was it just a different upbringing where they weren't like? Because like in Mexico, we're real superstitious about stuff. So was it different there over there con esa gente with in the bubble or in the circle like you lived in, where it wasn't really like you never heard stuff like that, or people talk?
No, not really.
No. Okay. Yeah, just curious.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, I grew up hearing that my soul has been through 8 billion species, and I have transmigrated during millions of years to be a human being.
Yeah.
So, with that said, I've been a tomato, I've been a tree, I've been a rabbit, I've been a rat, I've been a dog, I've been a cat, I've been a cow, I've been a monkey, I've been everything. My soul has transmigrated.
Yeah.
And that's the way I was raised, believing in all those, the transmigration of the soul, And I have a life that's Christ-centered, and, that's my belief, and that's it, simple.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, sir, I hope you have a good year next year, an even better year next year. I know you're doing good. Your team's growing. How many people do you have now on your team?
Well, I have a couple of Colombians in my team.
See?
I just had another addition to the team today. A client of mine became a realtor and calls me and says, Andres, I want to work. Like I want to work for you. I go, oh, you want to work for Realty of Chicago? She goes, Andres, I want to work like where you work.
Yeah.
Yes, Realty of Chicago. I'll introduce you to my manager broker.
Yeah.
And she goes like, Andres, no, I want to work with you. Like, I loved the way you and your team treated me from day one till the day I closed. And it was a very, very client that it took us 9 months from the beginning to the end. In a couple of times, we went under contract. The previous to the closing of the property where they ended up closing, 2 hours into the closing, the lawyer walks in and says the seller's lawyer just canceled the deal, at the closing table.
Oh, wow.
We had already even taken the picture with the key and the basket, and the gifts and no closing. And she calls me a week ago and she says, I want to work for Team Lozano. I want to work in your team.
Oh, wow.
And I go like, really? Like your clients will be my clients too? Yes, I want to work for your team. So my team is a team of 4 agents plus myself and an assistant. My biggest challenge moving forward with such a big team is how to generate leads.
Right.
How do we get to 120 closings next year? How can we take the business from $9 or $10 million to $20 million next year?
Right.
So it's a huge challenge, but I think we're going to close 120 deals next year.
Yeah.
I'm saying it here in public.
Next year, this time, we're going to come back and share about it.
Right. Next year, this time, it should be like, oh, ya he cerrado 90 deals so far and 30 under contract.
For sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you. I know you're busy, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.